Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from today. My name is Eric Betts, and I'm Content Manager at Fluke Reliability, home to Proof Technic and eMain. And we have a truly special webinar today. Speaker is Joe Kuhn. He is a reliability expert and longtime plant manager. He's going to be talking to us about avoiding implementation pitfalls. But it looks like we still have a few people joining us. So I'm just going to give everyone a minute or two to get settled here, and then we'll get underway with today's presentation. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar titled Avoiding Best Practice Implementation Pitfalls, a View by a Plant Manager. As I mentioned, our speaker is Joe Kuhn, and before I formally introduce Joe, I'll just cover a few quick housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will share a link with you after the event. You'll be able to find it on our Fluke Reliability YouTube channel as well, if you want to revisit the content or share it with your colleagues. As always, we also invite your comments and questions. If you look at the corner of your screen here, you'll see a Q&A chat box. If you think of a question for Joe at any time, just type it in and we will pose it to him at the end of the event. Okay, as I mentioned, today's presenter is Joe Kuhn. He worked at Alcoa Corporation for 32 years. He was an operations leader for nearly 3 decades, plant manager 3 times, and the global director for reliability and maintenance, serving dozens of locations in 8 countries. In 2019, Joe retired as the plant manager of Alcoa's massive work operations, and today Joe is passionate about maintenance and reliability and how it's deployed in plants. He produces a YouTube channel, serves as a magazine author and contributor, and he's been featured on numerous podcasts. Joe also consults, coaches, and mentors leaders. And he has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and is a CMRP. Also, I'm really excited because Joe's book, Zero to Hero, How to Jumpstart Your Reliability Journey Given Today's Business Challenges, is available on Amazon. And just for us, Joe has made the download free today. So Joe, thank you so much for being here. And with that, I'll hand it over to you for today's talk.
Yeah, thank you. And I am excited to be here. Was stated earlier, we're going to have questions at the end. My goal is to end at 10:45 or 9:45, whatever time zone that you happen to be in. So let's get going here and have a little fun and learn something. So I was just introduced. I left Alcoa after 32 years. I wanted to start being an evangelist on how to do reliability just a little bit different, and you're going to see that here. My background is plant management. I started off as a maintenance engineer, but after 3 years went into operations. And when you had operations at Alcoa, you also had maintenance. So the type of equipment I worked with was very capital intense, just huge rolling mills, smelters, 100-ton overhead cranes. Think a steel mill if you've ever seen pictures of that. And then for 4 years, I was the global director of reliability for Alcoa. I do have 344 videos out there on YouTube, so check it out. It's just, you just type in Joe Kuhn, K-U-H-N, and you'll see them. I do have a lot of videos on retirement because I am retired. I know my introduction sounded like I'm busy, but I'm not. I'm 90% plus retired, but love talking on this topic. Let's see, next screen. Okay, so one of the things I like to do is just, establish some credibility with the audience. Just one example, at a large aluminum smelter, we reduced our R&M spend by 42% while doubling OEE. At a rolling mill, reduced our R&M spend by 10% while increasing sales 29%. 7% reduction in R&M spend across 31 global locations. That was $115 million using the techniques I'm going to be talking about here. And then consistently going in and doubling wrench time. And I know hopefully your eyes aren't rolling when I say wrench time. Wrench time, I've found, is never the problem with the craftsman. It's the system that you have them working in and putting in things like planning, kitting, scheduling, problem solving. And as everyone knows on this call, I'm sure that R&M savings are really a small part of what you get with reliability, with increased safety, increased quality, increased throughput. So that's just to show that I've been on the execution side of reliability vast majority of my career, and now I'm doing some consulting part of the business. For most people, the traditional approach to reliability is not working. You learn some tools from a consultant on YouTube. You deploy those tools, you wait a year, you wait 2 years, your spending actually may go up. This is how I was trained. There was a bow wave of spending that happens. Spending's gonna go up for a few years, and then your reliability assessments get a little better. Some of your KPIs get better, but your overall business metrics, your cost or dollars per pound or whatever you're tracking gets worse. What's going on? And then you're on this, multi-year journey, and then the business cycles. You lose a plant manager, a sponsor, you have a hiring freeze, you freeze spending. Hey, how can we cut 20% from our cost? All these things happen. Frustration, rinse and repeat. Best practices are killed by the culture during execution. I hope this sounds familiar. It's not a good news story, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, first thing we're going to do is have a little fun. I'm going to turn it over to Robin here, and we're going to have a little survey. Okay, Robin, can you take control?
Survey has now been launched. Please make your vote. Thank you.
Okay, now I cannot see the survey. Hopefully everybody can see it. If I had one wish to improve the reliability of my plant, my personal plant, it would be to hire more people, reliability engineers, planners, craftspersons. We're short on people. We can do all this stuff. We just don't have enough people to do it. Number two, have top management invest more dollars. We need more dollars into replacing this equipment, getting better instrumentation out there, sensors on equipment, provide more training. Number three. Number four is we need to restructure because we just don't have the right sponsorship where we're at. We need to have the reliability group work for the plant manager or work for maintenance, whatever organization structure that is causing frustration at your plant. And number five, we need to understand our reliability problems better. We don't understand problems. Don't think too much on this one.
We have quite a few votes coming in. I'm going to close the poll in about 10 seconds. So if you'd like to vote, please get your vote in.
Your name will not be displayed by the number.
All right, closing the poll now, and I'll share the results. Joe, can you see the results also?
No, I cannot.
All right, well, I'll let you know 36% understand our reliability problems. It's our highest vote. A close second, 25% provide more best practice training. And our lowest is hire more people. And I'll go ahead and hide the poll now.
Okay, great. I was jotting those numbers down. Hey, I'm very impressed with this group. Maybe you've subscribed to my YouTube channel already, but I am going to put together a case that shows that understanding your reliability problems better is by far the biggest lever that you can pull. Okay, and what surprises me about this poll, and I'm impressed with this group, hire more people is almost always the answer. That number is about 75% when I conduct these polls. And when I go into plants, they always say this. And then after about a week of working with the leadership, they say that's not the problem. So, hey, this is a slide. I told my daughter I would work this in. She sent this to me, and she thinks this is what I do. I tell people that they're wrong. So hopefully you think that's a little bit funny. And here's what we're going to do today. Okay, I'm going to stop about 35 minutes from now. I'm going to tell 3 stories. 2 of them are pretty short. One's a little longer, and I'm just doing that so you understand the process that I go through with plants. I did this during my career with Alcoa at dozens of locations, and I've done it with maybe 10 since I've been retired. I'm going to connect the dots, and then we're going to ask questions. You guys are going to ask questions. Okay, so this is in Saudi Arabia. This was a $5 billion investment Alcoa made in the desert to put in a big refinery, to put in a smelter and a rolling mill. Huge asset, biggest investment Alcoa has made. The number one reliability issue in the company was, if you look at this screen on the left, you see this this yellow vehicle. It's hauling what we call a crucible. It's about 15,000 pounds of molten metal, molten aluminum, okay? And he is transferring them to this furnace right here. This is a box furnace that holds about 250,000 pounds. And this is in the cast house. This little blue cylinder here actually lifts the furnace and pours it into a casting mold, okay? So we need 9 of these vehicles. We have 9 of these vehicles, rather, in operation. We absolutely have to have 4 of them in operation, or very serious bad things happen. Safety things happen. We have to start pouring metal onto the ground, literally on the ground. And it's just a huge issue. So we have 9 of them. That's to have some reliability issues, maintenance issues, whatever. Well, this vehicle, if you look at the right picture, there's a trough mechanism that this vehicle lifts this crucible of molten metal, tilts it, and it pours into a bowl here. It's a round bowl, and then the metal goes down this trough at the top, very top of the screen. This cylinder collapses here, and this trough, this just looks like a gutter or a trough, extends into the furnace. So this bottom piece extends into the furnace about 8 feet. This top thing comes down, and you're pouring metal into it. The number one reliability issue in Alcoa was the reliability of this mechanism. And we averaged having 4 vehicles in service for about 2 months. And we had the Hincon, I think, is the maker of this vehicle. We had their engineering team working on this for 2 months. They went through 5 design changes, had engineers all over this thing. Okay, and then finally, I would happen to be the director of reliability for Alcoa, and they called me and asked, "Hey, we can't solve this. It's a disaster." The CEO was having a daily call with how many vehicles were in place, how many changes have we made, where are these projects at, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, I'm sure you've been there, where it's just enormous pressure. Well, myself and a guy named Danny flew over, took us a day to get there. But what we did is I went to the maintenance shop and just started talking to the mechanics, watching what they're doing, what changes have you made, trying to understand failure mode and all that. Danny went out with the operators and just went around in the vehicles with them, okay? All he did was just ride around with them all day long. At the end of the day, problem was solved. The problem was the operators had the choice of putting this in automatic or manual. When you put it in manual, you could pour it 2 minutes faster. 2 minutes times 60 cruises, that's 2 hours of free time that the operator was creating themselves by creating this shortcut. Okay, then we had that problem solved in 8 hours, and it all came from understanding the problem. All the reliability engineers, all the designers, all the supervisors, and all the managers were all looking at the wrong thing. They did not understand the problem. Once you understand the problem, the solution is obvious. This is an extreme case, but I'm telling you, I see it every single plant. Every single plant, there are dozens of these that are present that people just don't understand the problem, and they're throwing people and technology at the solution that may just be, don't hit that button. Okay, now another one. And I picked these examples really for this group, trying to, maybe these won't all fit you, maybe one will. This is the story of John and Jerry. That's actually their names. We put them in a position as full-time reliability engineers. This one plant I was at, we had 10 engineers. And the way we were structured is each engineer had an area. You know, for example, one engineer had the ring furnace, one engineer had the anode assembly, one had the pot rooms, one had aluminum services, really just spread out. And we said, engineer, your job is to be a maintenance engineer. Your job is to be a project engineer, and your job is to be a reliability engineer. Okay. So when we went out, my team went out and we observed where these engineers were spending their time. What happened in reality is reliability is the last thing that you have time for in an average day. You come in the morning, you got some chaos from the night, you have some problems, and you're working through all those things, and then all of a sudden it's 4:30 in the afternoon, and you just kind of say, well, I'll do that reliability thing tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. I have a test for reliability engineers. When I come into your plant, I'll sit down with each one of them just for a few minutes, and I'll ask them what they did yesterday. And you can tell what's important to people and what their priorities are by where they spend their time. So I'll go up to a reliability engineer and I'll just say, hey, what did you do yesterday? And they'll say, well, I read some email in the morning, then I went to the morning meeting. There are about 5 problems I was asked to get into and, restore flow kind of things. And then I had this safety project that I've been assigned to. I'm responsible for lockout, tag out. I've got an audit coming up in a month. I was working through that. Then I have this environmental project. And then, that was my day. That's not a reliability engineer. And we fool ourselves into thinking we have reliability engineers. What we did at our plant, and I consistently coach people to do this, is instead of having 10 people in 10 areas, we redistributed the 10 areas to 8, okay? So we made 8 engineers, and then we had 2 reliability engineers. I got a commitment from the president of the company. Nobody can give these guys work but me. That was just, nobody can give them assignments but me. If you want to give Jerry and John anything to do, you call me. They did not go to the morning meeting. We had some great best practices in place, but our costs were going up. But we were externally assessed as the second highest. This one company does a assessment, and we were the second highest they've ever gotten score. But our costs were going up, and our reliability is going down, and everybody's pointing the finger at each other. Well, these guys were freed up, and they're one of the things we did. And they focused on the CMMS. They focused on recurring problems and full-time reliability. They delivered year one, $2 million worth of realized savings. And all we did was say, you're prioritized as working on reliability. The 8 people, there was some grumbling at first that people were doing more work, but once John and Jerry started knocking off habitual problems we're having, one of the worst things we found is that we were doing I think it was 120 resets a day on a conveyor system by an electrician. They solved that problem by looking at it. They solved the problem within a couple of days. We didn't even notice it was a problem until we freed these guys up. So that's example number 1. Okay. Ooh, yeah, that's example number 2. I'm sorry. Saudi Arabia was number 1. John and Jerry is number 2. Okay. Now this story is a little bit longer. I'm going into a little bit more detail for you so you can kind of see the method behind the process. Okay. Acme, that's not the real name of this company. I'm disguising a little bit. They made specialty clothing, like think FR, think that fireman suit. They had 400 employees, 8 maintenance employees, no maintenance supervisors or planners. They had 4 types of machines. 70 sewing machines, but there were 2 different styles. It's not important, but 2 completely different styles of sewing machines. They had 3 pattern cutting machines and 6 radio frequency welders. That was the equipment they had. 100% reactive maintenance, 100%. The top employee complaint, the equipment reliability. You talk to the 392 people, it's just like, gosh, this equipment doesn't run right, it's breaking all the time. It was a safety complaint, it was a quality complaint, it was a throughput complaint. Number 1 issue. They had one of their KPIs. They didn't have great KPI system. They did have the homegrown CMMS system, not very good, but okay. They did track where downtime. So they had 1,300 or 13,000 hours of downtime, and it was increasing. The management team contacted me. They wanted to do preventive maintenance. They said, hey, this is a best practice. We want to hire you to help us put in PMs into our plant. That's why they hired me. Well, what I did is they actually had some lean background, and I convinced them to participate with me in an intense observation process called Chalk Circle. Okay. What I did is organized at 8 hours with the 4 senior maintenance technicians. 8 hours one-on-one, walked a mile in their shoes, the most senior people, got to see all the equipment, how they live their life. 8 hours, 4 people, that's almost a week, okay? And then I spent 8 hours with operators on the 4 machine types. So all 4 different machine types, 8 hours on each one, another 32 hours. Then I spent 4 hours with they had 2 production supervisors, 4 hours times 2 is 8 hours, okay? There were no maintenance supervisors, no planners, remember, so I couldn't walk a mile in their shoes. So here we are, 72 hours, almost 2 weeks of just seeing reality. Now, they hired me to help them with PM, okay? Who does this? Who goes out when somebody, say you get directed to put in place a PM, put in place a sensor, solve this problem? Who goes out and for the next 2 weeks and just watches? Very few people do that. Very few. Okay. So what did we see? What were some of the key current state observations that I saw? And there were more than 4, but these are 4 of the bigger ones. The maintenance techs were very talented, but they were blaming each other, conflict, reactive. One person would fix a sewing machine, then another person would fix the same sewing machine the next day and call the other guy an idiot because he doesn't know what he's doing. Just all kinds of blame going back and forth. They had no system to improve. And, the analogy I like to throw out here is, imagine you're playing baseball and you don't have any rules. There's no rules for outs or runs. I mean, it's just freaking chaos out there and frustration and hope. But the technicians were talented. That was observation number 1. Observation number 2, operations were talented too. They had good spirits, but they were frequently damaging the equipment, especially, and this was observed, new operators. They had pretty high turnover, like 100% in a year. But they had an extensive training program. It was a week-long training program, but the new operators kept coming. They were trying to do the right thing and ended up damaging the equipment. That was an observation. Number 3 is they had a TPM program to lube equipment. I'm not going to talk about this a lot more, but there was actually 0% compliance over 2 weeks with the lubrication. I am not a fan of having operators do lubrication. It's just not a high priority for them in their day. And lubrication that saved my career several times, doing excellent with the lubrication, but 0% compliance. Number 4, operators frequently knew 1 to 4 days in advance when the machine was going to break. Okay. So they said it's not acting right, and the senior people would know, okay, 2 or 3 days now, hopefully, I'm not on this machine tomorrow or the next day. And they just tried to get through their shift. Okay, key observations. Okay, so what did we do? Okay, here's 4 actions. 1, we established 4 equipment owners from these 4 senior technicians. Okay, we made 1 person in charge of style A sewing machines, 1 responsible for style B, okay, 1 for radio frequency welders, and 1 for the pattern cutters. That was everybody agreed that person is the expert on that piece of equipment. They are responsible for improvement. They own the equipment. They created the equipment maintenance plan, including the PMs, my red circle there, including the PMs. They trained operators. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And they coached their peers and created KPIs. So this 1 person, we all agreed, you remember my baseball analogy, we started to agree, okay, here's on this sewing machine, Jane is responsible for the PM. She's responsible for communicating to us, telling what problems are happening, trends they're having on that machine. So we created this ownership. The equipment, number 2, the equipment owners trained new operators. We had this extensive 40-hour training program. We gave each equipment owner 30 minutes of that, so a total of 2 hours to go through how the machine fails, how the machine talks to you, okay? When to call for maintenance help. The 100% of their training before was on safety, was on procedures for making product, not the reliability of the equipment, okay? So the equipment owners, these were, technicians, went and trained the operators. Huge. Number 3, we implemented a problem tagging system where operators now have a system to communicate early detection of problems. So an operator, if their equipment wasn't acting right, they could fill out that it was a 2-part tag. They attached 1 part to the piece of equipment, and then they had a board that they put the other half of the card on, and each of the equipment owners had a route, little milk run sometimes people call it. They go around and pick up all these tags. So they had all this equipment out there, and they'd walk around. That was part of their day to get the advance notice of a problem. And then 4th, we started a yesterday, today, tomorrow meeting. Some people call these daily management meetings, morning stand-up meetings, whatever. It's where you talk about what happened yesterday. Why did yesterday happen? What did we learn? Okay, what's going to happen today? Does anybody need any help today? Does anybody have any concerns for today? Hitting all the triggers, the goals. And then tomorrow, okay, tomorrow we're going to be having this outage. Any concerns with parts, pieces, coordination? So it's about a 10-15 minute meeting where we talk about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Normally this is on, I see this, well, at least start with like a 4-foot by 8-foot dry erase board. You report, maybe it's downtime. You want to start tracking how many hours of downtime, how many radio calls do we get emergency yesterday, how many PMs did I create? I'm charged, I'm equipment owner. I'm charged with creating 5 new PMs this month. Where am I at? How am I doing? Do I need any help? How many PMs did we execute versus our target? And then you get the opportunity to train your peers like, hey, yesterday, guys, we had this problem on the radio frequency welders. Here's how I fixed it. Here's how I suggest you fix it. If you have any problems, look me up, ask for help. It's a way of getting commitment and accountability. Also, I didn't add it here, but it drives a team. One of the problems, if you remember, of current state was everybody was blaming each other. It was just every technician worked on their own, and they really never communicated with each other. So this brought a sense of team, a little huddle or a halftime talk about what happened yesterday, what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow. Those are the 4 changes that we made. Okay, the results. We had a 30% reduction in downtime the very first year. The second year, 65% reduction from the base case. 65% reduction in downtime. Reliability, the CFO called me, it's probably been 3 weeks ago now, and told me these results. He said reliability is no longer a topic by operations. It's not even a topic. Financial impact, I can't communicate that, okay? For the first time, and this may not sound like a big deal, but it was a big deal to them. You know, they have a board of directors. The first time in their 100-year history, 100 years, they had a reliability slide that they presented to the board of directors because the change was so dramatic. Their throughput increased, their quality got better, and overall employee morale. So a question to you is, if I would have given the leadership team perfect PMs, remember, that's what they asked for. They wanted me to create PMs, and I gave them perfect PMs. Would they have achieved these results? You know, obviously the answer is no. They were just trying to, hey, I've read about PMs. Boy, if you want your car to last longer, you got to change the oil, you got to rotate your tires, you got to put new windshield wipers on it, you got to do these basic maintenance items, align your tires, you know, all that stuff. You got to do that. But by spending almost 2 weeks in observation, we implement actions far different than what they expected. Far different. Hopefully that makes sense. So connecting the dots. Okay, and that's just my term there. Just these 3 stories I told you. To me, there's 4 truths that I really try to get through to people. Every single reliability best practice attacks waste. You got to understand that. That's foundational. Why do we do preventive maintenance? We want equipment to last longer. We want to get it, you know, have it last its useful life. We don't want it to fail on a Wednesday and not have production and then have to work overtime. Why do we do scheduling? We do scheduling so that we can have all the parts and pieces ready. We can have production ready, you know, and we have all resources available at that time. That's why we do scheduling. Why do we do condition monitoring? Well, condition monitoring gives us advanced notice of a problem in the future. It detects a problem very early, okay? So every single, you know, problem solving, obviously that, you know, changes mean time between failure, you know, if you're making some progress, but every best practice is trying to address waste. So does it make sense? Here's a question for you, not a poll question. Does it make sense just to start implementing best practices and hope that waste goes away? Or does it make more sense to intimately understand your waste and then apply the best practice to the waste you have? And that's what I've been doing, very simply, and you get results so much faster. Remember, I told you the current state in an earlier slide was, hey, you're implementing best practices and you're waiting 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and your costs are going up. You can totally change that by understanding your waste first and then apply a best practice to that. You can get results in weeks. This Acme, that was actually year 1. I stopped working with them in February, and the end of that year, they had a 30% reduction. That same year, that wasn't a run rate, that's what they actually saved. So you could start getting results in weeks when you understand the waste. KPIs and opinion are insufficient to understand a problem or opportunity. And the number 1 problem I see at plants is, I know what the problem is, I know what to do, I just need money, I just need people. We just need to stop having all the, you know, once all this unplanned work gets behind us, we can start doing planned work. What I've found is, and it's the problem here, and this is a quote from Epictetus, he's a Stoic philosopher, I'm pretty sure he's Greek. It's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. This is the problem. Number 2, people think they already know the problem, and it's impossible to learn from that state. Number 3, intense observation changes everything. When clients call me up and say, Here's my problem. We're 90% unplanned work, 80% unplanned work. We got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Joe, what do I do? What they are screaming to me, and I put this in red like I'm screaming it. What they're screaming to me is you haven't done observation. And when I say observation, I'm talking about chalk circle observation, which is at least 4 hours. And you can see that Acme example, I did almost 2 weeks of observation, almost 2 week observation at a fairly small plant. Okay, the next, number 4, the actions you need, and I alluded to this already, the next steps and actions you need to take become obvious once you understand the problem. Those are 4 guiding principles to what I try to do with plants, okay? Back to the survey. If I had one wish, hire more people. I hear this, this is an exceptional group, and I'm not just saying that. I hear this at 100% of the plants that I work with virtually now, that I consult with, and that when I worked at Alcoa, this was number 1, every single location. This is the only call that I've ever been on where people didn't have this listed number 1. So pat yourselves on the back. Number 2 was, have the best, hey, if management just throws more dollars at us, the work that I did at Acme, the solutions that we put in place, what did they cost? What did they cost? Nothing. It cost nothing. Those improvements, the actions we put in place, there was no $50,000 here, $50,000 there, $20,000, $10,000. Yeah, you had to buy some problem-solving cards, and they may have spent $20 on those, but I call that zero. Provide more training, restructure the organization. I hear this a lot from reliability groups. Number 4. Hey, Joe, we report into operations and we just don't get respect. We think we ought to report into the plant manager. All those organizations issues go away when you understand waste. And then number 5, which I contend is the right answer, which 36% of you too said it was the right answer. I'm impressed with that on the survey. So, hey, this is an Einstein quote. Maybe you've seen this. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. That's what I'm trying to convey here. You got to understand current state, and you can only do that with observation. I'm an engineer. You tend to find, somebody tells me a problem, my tendency is to give a solution really quick, but you wallow around in observation changes everything. Okay, so I like to end these on what you can do tomorrow, not just telling you stuff, hey, that's all well and good, Joe. What can I do tomorrow? Okay, as an individual, you can add 4 hours of chalk circle observation to your weekly calendar. You could just go in on next Wednesday and just say, Wednesday from 12 to 4, I'm going to be out on the floor doing observation. And I'm going to do it. That's one area, one observation. That's not observation going to 50 pieces of equipment, one piece of equipment. Exit end of your cold rolling mill, exit end of your prep line, exit end of your anode assembly, whatever you're actually doing. You're standing, chalk circle is it means like have a virtual 4-foot diameter circle that you stand in for 4 hours. Okay, that's why it's called chalk circle. It's not management by walking around and just saying high-fiving everybody. So that's something you can do on your electronic calendar. You can do that tomorrow. Do that today. Number 2, add observation to your data set for presentations. The next time you're asked to give an update on a failure mode, add that you went and observed the last 3 PMs. Okay, this equipment's mean time between failures. This is the failure mode. Oh, and I watched the last 2 PMs. I watched them. You'll be shocked at what you see when you see PMs being executed. There could be precision issues. There could be issues where the PM is not fully completed. There's 10 steps and they do 5 because one of the guys called off sick. And the engineer doing the analysis assumes that all PMs are done with 100% precision and 100% complete. And that is rarely, I'll say it one more time, rarely the case, that it's done with precision in the right order and all steps are done. That's rarely the case. Number 3, you can add go and see to your meetings. So you organize a meeting, a problem-solving meeting, and you're talking about data. Put on your hard hat, go out and see the equipment, go out there and talk to an operator, talk to the mechanic out on the shop floor. Things look different out there. Create that go and see culture. Number 4, challenge others when they only give KPIs and opinion. Sometimes it's good to be the plant manager. One of the things that I required was 16 hours of chalk circle observation to get on the agenda for the lead team. So if you had a change that you wanted to do, you know, a change in a bearing, you wanted to go to a different style or change the lube, or you wanted to change a quality practice, you had to have 16 hours observation to get on the agenda. Okay, now everybody's not a plant manager that can't do that, but actually during a meeting when you're having this debate and somebody's saying, well, I think this, the KPIs say this, just ask them. Just ask them. It says, have you gone out and done observation? How many hours of observation have you done? Have you observed the PMs being, one PM being conducted on that piece of equipment? Just one. Have you observed it the whole time? The answer is almost always no. Number 5, what can you do? You can go watch my videos. Okay, I've got 344 of them out there. I've got them set up in playlist, you know, to kind of look at things that advance in your career or culture. A lot of people, what they do is they send these to their leaders. They'll see a video and they, you know, and they don't want to put themselves out there, so they'll say, hey, check out this guy on YouTube. What do you think of him? And sometimes that third party stating, you know, something differently than you may resonate with them. So look at my videos and send them. This is a very powerful tool to use. And some of my videos are 1 minute long, 2 minutes long, so that they don't take up a lot of people's time. So those are actions you can begin tomorrow. And with that, I have time for questions. And Robin, if you could stop me being presented so I can see Eric, we can start taking some questions.
Joe, thank you so much. That was great. Just before we get into some questions here, Joe, I just want to do a little bit more housekeeping. Just as a reminder to everyone, today's webinar was recorded and we'll post it to our Fluke Reliability YouTube channel. We're also going to send out a link via email to everyone who attended today. We do have a couple questions that have been submitted. If you have a question still, you can still drop it into the Q&A chat box and we'll get through as many questions as time allows here. A couple people have asked if the deck will be available after the presentation. Yes, we'll share that when we share the recording. Also, a couple people mentioned that the webinar software wasn't serving up the book link. So we'll be sure to send that out via email as well. All right, Joe, jumping into the questions here. The first one that came through was simply, how can we add observation time to our week?
Yeah, I am not looking, I'll answer that in a second. I'm looking at I'm not looking at the camera there, Robin, maybe you can help me with that. But how can you add observation to your week? Well, one, I covered that, is put it on your electronic calendar. That's what I did. And you know, your calendar tends to get filled up with stuff and you have to own your calendar. And a follow-up question to that is, a lot of people say, I don't have any time to do that. Joe, I'm busy, my organization's busy, my team is busy. How do I do this? Well, you know, my comeback to that is, you know, you're doing reactive maintenance now, you're making a lot of bad decisions now, and you're living with the consequences of those bad decisions. You've got to start making better decisions. And the only way I have found, and I've been doing this for 35 years now, the only way I found is to add this chalk circle observation to the data set. That's the only way I found to do that. you're going to continue to make bad decisions. You're going to continue to have, the consequences of that. Just like, people and maybe nobody, the most common call that I get from people is like Acme. They're 100% reactive maintenance. And the only way to get out of 100% reactive maintenance is to start doing planned work. Start doing planned work. So the same thing applies to finding time to do. You're collecting data. You're making decisions with incomplete data that has gotten you the results that you got now. So to me, use your electronic calendar as the most powerful thing. I will share a short story. Again, sometimes it's good to be the plant manager. I heard this same complaint from my leadership team. And so what I did is I sent a meeting notice to 2,000 people for a meeting reoccurring every Wednesday from 12 to 4. And and it worked. It worked. So nobody could set up a meeting during that time.
Guys, can you talk more about Chalk Circle? How specifically have you implemented it?
I'm trying to find myself. Okay. Hey, all right, there we go. That's the wrong screen. I'm sorry, I'm messing around here. Can you see me, Eric?
I can. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. So the question was, give it to me again.
Yeah, can you just talk more about Chalk Circle and how specifically have you implemented it?
Okay, Chalk Circle, it was defined by Tiochi Ono in the Toyota production system. So maybe you know that name, but it's all about having this virtual circle. If you're having a problem with the reliability of the equipment on the exit end of a hot rolling mill, that means you go out, you collect all the KPIs, you collect all the opinion, you talk to operators, you talk to mechanics, you get all the history, get the CMMS, and then you go out to the exit end of the hot mill and you stand there at least 4 hours. And I promise you, you will be shocked at what you see. Now, a lot of people, and this has happened to me, you'll stand out there an hour and a half and 2 hours, and you'll say, I'm just completely wasting my time. There's just, and then something happens. And you're just shocked. You're like, well, you see the operator like, well, take the crane and bang up against something. You're going, what? Why did he do that? And then you go talk to the operator and he goes, oh, this hydraulic system jams up all the time, and all you do is smack it in the side and it goes again. And you're like, what? And you'll just be shocked. And I'll tell you what, when I go into a plant and I organize Chalk Circle, I do this a lot I love doing it with lead teams. I did this for several years with Alcoa. I'd organize a lead team observation, and I would always be paired up with the plant manager. Okay. And we'd go out and observe something like the exit of the hot mill for 8 hours, and another team would go to the entry of the cold mill, wherever their strategic problems were. And every single time we got back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we're debriefing all these teams, that went out and observed, every single time they said, this is the worst day I've ever seen at our plant. I've never seen it this bad. This was the most unusual day. And then we kind of set our game plan to go out and observe the next day. Oh my gosh, Joe, this is the second worst day I've ever seen in the history of this company. I've been here 20 years. This never happens. Third day, we go out there and they see all this waste and they hang their head, and now they're ready to learn because they think they now don't know everything. They thought their KPIs and opinion were right, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's this alternative universe going on out on the shop floor. And then by Friday, they're ready to create a game plan. So one of the things I started doing on Mondays when I'm training people on how to go out and do this process, I said, promise me, you can't say this is the worst day that we've ever had at the plant. And this isn't the second worst day. Very common problem. But yeah, it's Chalk Circle. It's going out there, it's standing there and wallowing it. The longest I've ever observed, and this may sound painful to you, but it was 3 weeks. 3 weeks I was observing a problem. This was in an Australian operation. And you may say, gosh, who's got that time to invest? The solution we put in place that cost $0 to implement was worth $5 million a year. And I was, how am I doing on time here?
We got
I
about
was,
10 minutes. Yeah.
yeah, I was with I love telling this story. I'll try to make it short here. As I was with about 40 Australian people in a room working on breakthrough reliability cost issues. And everybody was Australian but me. And I mentioned this. There was I mentioned a process. They were before they had to do any maintenance, they had to power wash it. So I mean, it was this muddy mess, real dirty, caustic, nasty environment. You had to go in, and they spent $20 million a year at these 3 plants on power washing. Well, I went out there and I was just looking for how they did things, looking for waste. And these power washers, they showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but they needed an approval to proceed form from management because of they were working with hot caustic and just some nasty stuff. They needed to have a safety check off before they could work. Okay. But what I observed is the earliest over 3 weeks that these power washers started working was 9 o'clock in the morning. The latest was 11:30 in the morning. So I go in this meeting and everybody's, you're sharing ideas, you're brainstorming, you're putting Post-it notes on the wall. We've all done those kind of things. I stood up and I said, hey, I think we've got an opportunity to save, 20% or so off our power washing, and just from the efficiency really of start time and rinse time of the crew. And the president of maybe his vice president of purchasing stands up, 35, 40-year guy stands up and says, Joe, hey man, I'm sorry, you didn't know this, but my team has just renegotiated that contract. We did a deep dive into everything. We've got a nice concession on rate, and we really, really hit a home run last year with our power washers. And you didn't know that though, but we really got all the juice out of that lemon. So we need to move on. And then I stood back up and I said, well, I've been watching the power washers for 3 weeks now. And you could have heard a pin drop. And they said, what? You did what? I've been watching them, and I shared with them, they don't start before 9. I said, we could start on Monday, changing their start time from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and we could save $5 million a year. What? How much did that cost? That cost me an airfare. Hey, I just wanted to hang out in Australia for 3 weeks anyway. So anyway.
Great story. How do we change the culture of, quote, that's the way we've always done it?
Oh, yeah. To me, the way you always done it, one of the things I love saying, okay, and this really works with people, I'll give it a try. Let's conduct a 90-day experiment. Use those terms. So a lot of times people like to say, hey, we need the operators to start lubricating something, or we're going to take away lubrication of this equipment from the operators to the mechanics. On that may cost more money, but they're going to be MLT 1 certified. We're going to do this change. Let's run a 90-day experiment, see how it works out. When you say 90-day experiment, everybody knows that you're going to get back together and you're going to say whether you were right or wrong. A lot of times when you're trying to enact a change, nobody ever comes back. Nobody ever circles back to see that was a good change. So they're fighting, gosh, we've implemented all these changes, and then 2 years from now, nobody cares. We're doing this work. Yeah, it didn't do anything. I want to conduct a 90-day experiment. I'll get back to you and say whether I was right or wrong. Those are very powerful words.
Awesome.
Especially when you're dealing with the operators and maintenance people, when you're asking them to do something different. You're asking them to change how they, install a bearing, or hey guys, I know you've never, leveled shafts with a laser before, but let's do this for 90 days. We're going to train everybody. We're going to see how it works, and I'm going to share all the data to you. I'll get back with you after 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months, and then we'll make a decision on how we're doing. Give me 90 days. I'll buy everybody in here. We'll have pizza if I'm wrong.
Nice. Which is better, dedicated area owners or rotating?
Uh, when you're when you're talking about area owners, you talking about technicians, or does it say, Eric? Maybe
It
not.
doesn't say. Yeah, that's the question.
Uh,
Which is better,
you want
dedicated area owners or rotating?
it's hard to answer that question. I would say you have to drive ownership. Ownership changes everything. So if you can rotate that quarterly, okay. If you say you want to rotate it weekly, I'll say, yeah. And hey, I'm going to there's 10 different assignments and I'm going to rotate, I'm going to spend a day on each one and then I'm going to come back. Well, nobody's going to, it's like having a rental car. It's not your car. You don't care if the tires get rotated, right? So I would say whatever you balance, I understand how people want to rotate. They don't want to have the same job, but ownership is powerful. So you may rotate, like I said, once every quarter, once every month is, I don't like that, but I can understand some people getting there. You're going to sacrifice a lot of ownership. If somebody has to live with a problem, wait till you see housekeeping improve. When you say, hey, you own bearing replacement on these rolls, you're doing that. That's all you're going to do. The housekeeping looks great. Their parts look great. They understand, it's just, it's very powerful to drive ownership. And it's time. Now, there may be some jobs that you say, oh, okay, bearings, that's going to be a permanent assignment. That person is doing that for 5 years. And they're going to bring their expertise in there. Maybe it's welding these tubs that, hey, it's not critical, but we can rotate people through that. But ownership is what you're looking for. And there's no substitute for ownership.
They did jump back in to clarify they did mean technician. So thank you for that. If my plant already has an established work management process, planning, scheduling, PMs, etc., how would you incorporate increased observation time to improve further?
Well, most places are in that situation. When you're deciding what projects to if you got a scheduling, you got a project that's 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, is there observation that supports doing it? People are making decisions based on KPIs and opinion. How do you force that? And as an individual, you can be an influencer. You can just say, hey, hey, I understand this is the KPI, the mean time between failure, but has anybody ever watched this PM be conducted? Has anybody ever watched this rebuild? Just stood there and watched, are we doing it the way the manual says and the best practice is? You just have to find time in your schedule to do it. Otherwise, you're making bad decisions. You're making bad decisions without it. The electronic calendar, I know it sounds simple, but that's what I did. That's what I did, and I modeled that. It's a lot easier when this comes top down in the organization. When I just say, you're not going to be able to do your job unless you have chalk circle observation in your data set. That's a lot easier. But you as an individual contributor can do it too. You can model the way, and then people are going to ask you, why do you keep asking for observation? Well, here's an example. Here's an example. Here's an example. I thought they were, one problem I'm thinking it was on the West Coast. They had a bearing problem that kept going out. And I was out there I was visiting and I was observing, and they stopped lubricating one whole side of this conveyor because of a new safety rule. They stopped doing it. Now the mechanic said, hey, I can fix this. All I got to do is put in these remote grease lines and we can put it. But management said they didn't have time for that. So we're lubing half of this conveyor. That conveyor was failing once a quarter. 3 people, 3 days to fix, once a quarter. We did not have time to observe. That won't go along with me. We didn't have time to do it right? We got to be better than that.
All right. This next question says, sometimes it's like maintenance speaks a different language. What are some KPIs that translate to leaders in production or finance?
Oh, hey, I love this one. Dollars. You got to speak the language of dollars. You can't talk to a plant manager, most plant managers, about mean time between failure. You can't talk to them dollars. So if you had 10 failures that were, $10,000 a piece last year, and you implemented a change and you said, hey, we believe that's going to be 2 next year, you say, hey, we should save $80,000. Mean time between failure means nothing. Schedule compliance means nothing to them. You know, some of them, and it's very popular, like, hey, PM's good, you know, so what's our PM compliance? And if your PM compliance is 90%, oh, you're doing good. Oh, I used to say, what's the 10%? Oh, that's our bottleneck production center. We haven't done all the PMs on that in months, but you know, we got all the drinking fountains inspected and all the handrails inspected, but the critical PC production center, we didn't do. So the language, convert everything to dollars. That's what people listen to. Even if it's production, you convert, hey, you can have, if you reduce your downtime 10%, your unplanned downtime 10%, okay, that's this much more in throughput, this much in overtime. Do that math for them, convert it to dollars. Always speak in dollars, and you're always in sales. If you're in reliability, if you're on this call, you are in sales. You're in sales. You've got to sell, and you got to connect the dots. Hey, guys, I don't know if anybody noticed, but last year we had 10 motor failures and we only had 2 this year. Most people, the plant manager and production, they do not know about the problem that they didn't have. You don't know. Now, when was the last time you called up the electrical company that's supplying power to your house or your plant and just thanked them for 100% compliance, 100% energy yesterday? You don't do it. So when the problem that it's very similar to safety, reliability people, if they do a good job, nobody knows unless you're in sales. Got to be in sales.
Nice. We're just a couple minutes over here, Joe, but I did want to take one last question before we conclude today. This last one is, in your opinion, what percentage of preventive maintenance workload should be inspections? That is, while the equipment be inspected is in service and running.
Well, what was the last part about?
Yeah, so in your opinion, what percentage of preventive maintenance workload should be inspections? That is, while the equipment being inspected is in service and running.
Okay, what should my goal? I'll tell you what I actually did. I sometimes I'm a little dramatic to get the needle to move. Okay, I told people I wanted 0 inspections. I want 0. If you know the equipment, you can probably find the right sensor. You can come by with UE, with IR, with Vibe, with oil analysis. Going out and looking at stuff most of the time is meaningless. And that's one of the things that I did early on was a PM optimization. We called it PM Kaizen. We had so many inspections. I want a mechanic to go look at that hydraulic system, 1 hour a day, every day. Okay, so my goal was 0. That was, if you understand the equipment, how it fails, that hydraulic system, you're going around, if you put a continuous vibration sensor on there, or do oil analysis on it, and you have some UE route on it, you should never go out and just Jim and Billy go out there and say, well, it's still there, it sounds right. Most of the time, I found those to be a complete waste. Now, there's some safety ones that you have to do, like on a 100-ton crane, you have to inspect this and that. You have to inspect the cables. Okay, not that. But my goal was 0, recognizing that the real goal was probably around 5% or so. But you don't understand failure mode. This is generally right. You don't understand failure mode if you're just doing inspections. That's the easy button. And it's a waste of manpower.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and expertise with us, Joe. You're getting some nice compliments in the comments here. And for those of you who may have missed the intro, Joe's book, Zero to Hero, How to Jumpstart Your Reliability Journey, Given Today's Business Challenges, is available now on Amazon, and we will share a link out via email. Joe, did you want to share any comments?
That's not my picture front, but that's trying to get people to click on it. But it's free, an ebook today and tomorrow.
Awesome. Are there any comments you want to make in closing before we conclude, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I retired to do this. I retired to really try to be an evangelist in the space of doing reliability and maintenance different. So often, you know, people, they do it the traditional way, the way I learned. Hey, you start a reliability journey and you'll see some results 4 or 5 years. And the plant manager can't handle that. You walk into the plant manager's office and say, I got a 5-year plan to get better. They'll throw you out. They need to get better this month, next month, this quarter. And by understanding waste, like I've highlighted here, it's possible. I've done it dozens of times. So reach out to me. I look at every comment on my YouTube. So if you watch a YouTube video, send me a comment. You got my email in there. I help a lot of people virtually. I really try to avoid coaching on site with plants. I'm retired. I like being retired, but for the right person, I do a lot of virtual stuff, and I will go to a plant or two a year for the right students, the right people that want to learn. If you contact me and say, I want you to do the reliability thing at my plant, I'll say no. If you want me to coach the team, I may say yes.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. There will be a brief survey that's going to pop up. It's just a few questions. If you'd be so kind as to take the time to respond, it really does help us improve these webinars. If you have any additional questions, if you want to connect directly with the Fluke Reliability team, you can reach out via our website or via LinkedIn. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone.